Welcome to another episode of Grown Men 2. I'm Byron.
I'm Eric Fredericks.
And I'm Jarrell Burnett.
And today we're going to talk about something that I think that it is important for not only just our community, the Black community, but everyone, especially in these times, has to talk about and address. And that's going to be mental health. Just to go over, was having a conversation prior to this, and Eric was saying that he has to stay off of social media because there's always something going on, and that is more than true. Social media breeds a lot of anxiety, depression, just a lot of emotions with everything going on, in addition to just normal bullying and as well as envy of people's lives based on pictures and videos that they see. So now that all this is going on with COVID, continuing police brutality, the election year, all that, it is more important to make sure we check on our people. Mental health is very serious. So, Eric, give me an idea of what you feel mental health is, I guess, for these times, how's it affecting you? Let me say that.
Kind of the first thing that I've just personally been noticing is a need to try to seek peace more often, actively. And I've tried to do that in a variety of ways, whether that's going out for a run or just, maybe walking around the neighborhood, clearing the air. But I feel like during this COVID situation, there's just more, I feel more claustrophobic, if you will, right? You can't get to the normal things that you want to get to. I'm always stuck in this office that you can see right now for work, all day. So it's just hard. And I feel like you got to try to break that up a lot and do maybe a little bit more than you normally would. And to the point that you made out, trying to limit my social media intake, man, that's a struggle. Today was not a great day in that regard for me. But yeah, I just feel like you have to do more general self-care than you would normally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about you, Jarrell? What do you think?
Oh, yeah, I mean it's rough. I guess to give like a brief background, I was a mental health caseworker for almost 5 years, and in those moments, I didn't really pay attention as much to think about how mental health affects the common person. Um, and then as I got further into my job, you start realizing that, my caseload is predominantly white, um, very few African Americans. But going through what I've been going through now, I felt, I'm not going to say I was going through, or I am, you know, depressed, but I've gone through a state of depression, sitting at home every day, working from home, having very little contact with outside of, um, going to the grocery store to get necessities. I have a significant other who is pregnant, and so we're really limited on what we're doing, um, and any extra activities. But what what really hurt, and I think where I really started feeling it, I'll give you a little story. So I'm in the grocery store and pushing everything around, putting everything, and there's a lady with a baby, and she's driving. So I saw her one aisle. I went a couple aisles. I saw her again. Well, her child started dropping stuff out of the cart, and I go to like pick it up, and it's just my natural thing. It's just what I do.
Right.
And she's like, no, 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 I'm okay. And I'm like, and then I'm looking. I'm like, okay, you got a mask on. I got a mask on. Hold on. Like, she's not. She's just worried. but that's frustrating. Like I can't even be myself. Um,
Hmm.
and that hit home. And after that, it's just starting to think like, okay, normally I get out, I go to the gym. Normally I get a 30-minute ride into work where I kind of get ready for my day. I deal with my day. I got 30-minute ride home where I get to decompress for a little bit in my car before I come home to two
Hmm.
children. And now I literally go from dealing with children to walk downstairs and there's work. And then when I'm done working, I walk back upstairs and kids are right there. So that sense of peace, that sense of personal time that I had, um, I didn't realize how much it was affecting me in a positive way, and how much now with COVID, we're dealing with it in a negative way. Um, Mental health can be both positive and negative, um, and it all depends on how we functionally deal with it. And I think that it's very hard because I can't name anybody who has had to do this willingly, or I'm sorry, unwillingly. Most people, if they work from home or they do those things, they do it willingly. Where it's one day I'm good, and literally I got an email saying you can't come back to the office, and it's like, so it's been very difficult in that aspect, of just doing it. How do you explain to your kids, hey, Tegan, you can't go to school. You can't be around your friends. Daddy, I just want to see my friends. That starts to get depressing because she's sad, walking around upset. I just want to see my teachers. So all of that and grouped in one, this has been extremely hard. And on my mental health, it's been extremely hard.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I can't even imagine having to do that and have kids in school
Hmm.
and a pregnant wife and then having to deal with work, and all that wrapped into one. I mean, my viewpoint is a little different only because I've been working from home for a while prior to this. But the bigger issue is that, and most people don't know, is that I suffered from depression from early on age. Never talked about it because never thought about it. And let me say this: when I say I never thought about it, it's because you wasn't exposed to the information about it. Um, growing up, you did things. You went outside. We didn't have PlayStation. We didn't have social media. We went outside and played. So if I was depressed, I ran it off playing football or whatever sport it was at that season. We were playing
Yeah.
outside. So I never had the time to be depressed, or at least to think that I was depressed. It wasn't until I got older, like a little bit older, maybe towards the end of middle school into high school, that I started realizing that um, there is something wrong, and that, and I don't know if you can understand it because I'm not saying you can't, but I'm just saying from my standpoint,
Yeah.
that disconnect of that. I don't know what's going on while I'm sad, but I'm sad for some reason, but I don't have
Hmm.
nothing to do, nothing to attach it to. And there could be many, many things attached to. My dad wasn't in my life, and that's a lot of issues that I carried from then till just recently. Um, but that wasn't the only issues. It was just me being me. That was my normalcy. So it became so normal that I became a chameleon. And I know we talked about the Candace Owens and stuff like that,
Hmm.
but and how I almost dived down that trails because that not knowing who I was or not strong enough to know who I was allowed me to jump into those situations where I was trying to be a chameleon to everyone. So it was
Right.
more like if I'm around somebody, I'm going to be happy when they're happy. And if somebody's feeling cool and down or whatever it is, I'm going to be that way because as long as I'm in the vibe, I'm just like water. I'm just going to flow with it. But I never found that solidness in myself. So it was just like there's no foundation for me. I'm just forming to whatever else everyone else was doing. But when I'm by myself, it was always the hardest time. So and people, you go to work, everybody goes to work and they see a person, and if you're smiling, they think that everything's great because
Hmm.
to smile. Well, that became my routine. I would smile, be happy all the time, and that was my thing. Byron's happy, so if Byron ain't happy, something must be really wrong. You hear what I'm saying?
Yep.
And that was a tiring thing. And when I say tiring, it was so tiring that if I came to work and maybe I had a headache, or maybe I just had my normal resting face, people's like, "What's the matter? What's the matter? What's going on? Are you okay?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. I don't want to be up." I mean, normal stuff.
Sure.
Because even though there could have been something wrong, I would have never ever mentioned it, because the mindset of mine was that if you mention it, now you're weak.
Oh, for sure.
And I often look at when Black people say, you got to be strong, because if you don't, the world will take advantage of you, or the world will run over you, all those kind of things. So you just learn to be that, and not having those role models that even showed those kind of weaknesses, especially crying and stuff like that. You don't know that's a simple, normal human being, human thing to do. So you just don't do it. You may see your mother or your aunts and stuff like that, cry. But even in church, I didn't see too many men crying, So all I saw was hardness, and it wasn't thug material. It wasn't thugs. It was regular, everyday men who went to work, but they weren't crying. They weren't sharing feelings. You barely hugged to see each other, unless it was real close family. It was a handshake, and it had to be real strong and firm, So that's led to me to now. It's like when I see these things online and stuff like that, I key in on it real quick. And I have to always keep a self-monitoring ideal of where I am, because I can easily fall back into those traps. And I left a gap of how that transition to where I am is today, because I want to leave that for another time. But fast forwarding to today, seeing this stuff take place every day, and to say this, seeing George Floyd die on camera is traumatic for anyone, not just the Black community, for anyone who saw that. So when we show our children, when we show friends or family, other any race or anything, that is a very tragic thing. And no one talks about the mental health part of that. No one ever talks about, hey, how does that affect you? Imagine this though, seeing it repeatedly over and over, over and over, over and over, And I don't want to sit here and just keep naming names, because we know the names. The names are etched in our minds, and I can picture it, like almost each one, and it becomes harder to just stomach certain things when you hear another situation about it. You're just like, whatever, and you try to become numb again to it. But in this climate that we're sitting at home with family, you got kids, or you got things going on, your job is just telling you do it this way, you learning new ways of doing things, you become so distant to a lot of self-care acts that you normally did. Like you said, the driving. Before I came back to working from home, I was a case manager for foster. So I drove a lot of my time, and I like to drive. I mean, I put probably maybe 30 to 40,000 miles on my car in 1 year, just driving around, and that was my downtime. And I didn't realize it until I started back working from home. And I'm just like, I came from vacation, and I left the job, went on vacation for 6 days out in the Bahamas and everywhere, having fun, and then came back home to reality. And it was like, okay, what is going on? Because now I have to sit in all the things I have to think about every single day, not just at night anymore. Now it's in the daytime. Now it's in the middle of the day. And I ate more food. You know what I'm saying? I didn't exercise, and I have a full weight system downstairs in my garage. You know what I'm saying? But I look past it, because my mind doesn't go to do self-care. It goes to get by. I need to just get by for the next hour, or get by for the next day. And I did find myself, as these situations started happening, I was becoming more angry. I was becoming more less tolerable of people. And even if they were friends of mine, or I'm not gonna say friends, people that you knew of, I was less tolerable if they didn't agree with my point of view, because I didn't care anymore. I didn't have any connection with them, because I didn't go out to them. I didn't have to ever see them again because COVID. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
And I realized that was a disconnect, and that was a rabbit hole that I was just going down, because all I was doing was allow myself to get deeper and deeper into that hole. And that hole is nothing but depression. That hole is nothing but anxiety. And hole is nothing but self-deteriorating issue that Black people face continually, and we pull ourselves back out and we go back in, and we pull ourselves back out and we go back in. And sometimes the end result, and we're seeing it now, is that people are killing themselves over this. And we don't know why. We think he didn't. Why would he do that?
Mm-hmm.
And just to give you a spoiler alert, that has crossed my mind, not recently, but that has crossed my mind back before. And I'll tell you about that, on the next time, about that span of when I had those thought processes of suicide. And looking back at it, I'm saying I understand where people are today that can feel that way because of what's going on. And it's crazy that no one talks about the mental health of people today, but we're so worried about, if we're saying the right thing, or like as far as for like Nick Cannon's situation, if he said the right thing, or if he's being politically correct, and I get Black Lives Matter, and when it comes to this, but Black mental health also matters too, because that's always been shunned to the back.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
But I view this COVID situation as an opportunity to force this conversation.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe some folks might use this as an opportunity to seek, help or learn about some methods to address it. Right.
Yeah. But the problem is this, though, exposure to wanting to do it. Think about this. The Black community has always been second, third, fourth place in mental health. Mm-hmm. And anytime we talk about mental health with Blacks, there was always about stuff like ADHD, schizophrenia, stuff that's going to cause a behavior that they didn't want to, that didn't go against, that went against conformity, or that went against the norm. Although it happened on each race, when they attribute that to just who we are, not through the traumas that we went through, or through the traumas we continue to go through. Right. Because there are issues that we face that have been genetically encoded in us from slavery. I mean, and if people don't want to believe that, they don't have to. But the reality is this: if your people have struggled for years and years and years, you teach that. You don't teach them that something's greater coming. You teach them that, hey, get past this and you'll see something greater. I don't know what it looks like, but you'll see something greater, because I've never seen it. So,
and you get trained to see threats.
Yeah. So now we're speaking of a situation where it's affecting everyone, not just people of color. It's affecting everyone. And now we are staring at it in the face, and we're seeing that, wow, we were missing so much. And not just us, but just a lot of people are saying that, wow, we were missing the whole situation that was going on in this community. And how did we miss this? No, you said you didn't miss it. It was that you were too busy in your lives. And that's understandable. I never expect anyone of another culture to understand my plight. I expect them to at least acknowledge that when I say it. But you don't have to understand it. You don't even have to respect it. You don't even have to even voice your opinion about it. But if you're going to voice something about it, you at least got to give me, or give the community or the culture, the understanding that, okay, you may be feeling this and I don't understand it. So my opinion is only based on what I see. When it comes to mental health, anxiety is anxiety. Depression is depression. Suicide is suicide. All those things stem from something. It doesn't matter if it stems from you lost your job, because not just losing your job, that job means something that tied to something else. It can tie to family. It can tie to self-worth. It can tie to a lot of other things that we just escape from because it doesn't fit our narrative. Our narrative can be this: I'm stuck at home. I'm single. I have no family in my city because I moved to better myself. And now I can't go see my parents, because if I go see my parents, I may kill them because of COVID. That is a terrible thing. My mom lives about 20 minutes away from me, but my grandma lives with her. And I worry that because Angela is a nurse, if she gets COVID and I go see her and my grandma gets sick, that's on me. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if I can live with that. So it's like, I want to go see him, but then do I go see him? Do I risk it? Do I play this little game of that? Well, it's not that serious. I don't have that. So that's a lot of stuff that plays on your mind every day. And family is important. Friends are important. And staying connected is important, but I think social media keeps us connected in a way that continues to perpetuate the negative stimulation that we get.
It's a dark cycle for sure.
You know, and I'm gonna throw a shameless plug in here. Shameless plug. On Sundays, when I'm here working at night and stuff like that, I have Deep Third on because it escapes me from everything else. And I'm just like, I need to have some excitement in my life. I can watch TV, but I need to interact with people who I see and know doing something fun. You know what I'm saying? We have these serious conversations on Friday when we film, and then Sunday I can turn around and say, good, now it's something fun and light we can do, you know what I'm saying, or I can hear about, you know,
Right.
because it erases my mind from thinking that all we go through is issues in our lifetime, you know. And of course, this is not a blanket statement for everyone, but if I'm going through it, there may be another person going through it. There may be another 3 million people going through it. And I think, and I could tell you this from my point of view, and I'll leave it at that. When I was going through depression, I thought it was only me. You see? Because that singularity in my mind was, I'm the only one that's feeling this. No one understands how I feel. Because no one understands how I feel, I'm not going to tell anybody about it because they will think that I'm crazy or think that I'm whatever. Or they'll be like, pray about it.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't think that way. Just think positive. You know, the things that cliche things.
Yep.
Cliche doesn't work when you're in the storm. And you know, and I hope one day people realize that prayer, cliche talking, and just blanket statements will not help mental health. You have to have a combination of a bunch of things in order to help and to help people cope with it. And it takes things. The biggest thing it takes is to listen to the person.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
My biggest thing was that if I'd ever talked about suicide, the first person would say that's selfish. And from a standpoint of anyone who's ever been through suicide, they're not thinking selfish. They're thinking that they're the burden on somebody or the burden on some people, or they're taking, and that's a mindset that you cannot ignore, especially in these times. You know what I'm saying? You can't ever ignore it, but especially in these times when people are in their homes themselves 24 hours a day almost.
Yep.
This is breeding ground for a negative mental health, non-self-caring lifestyle. So I just don't know where to go at from there. As far as that, I just hope that people, if whoever sees this, that they understand that the way out of it is to talk to people. And sometimes you got to talk to strangers who you don't know, and that's professional, and don't think that they're going to look at you a certain way because they don't. And you got to, and it's like anything. If you have an issue and the person you're talking to and you don't feel comfortable with that person, try another person.
Yep.
It's just like anything. If you go to a restaurant and you don't like it, you just don't go back to that restaurant. You find another restaurant until you find the one you like. And it's the same thing with people. I think we get in the mindset that we think that every person, if they're a professional in that field, at least in mental health, that we should be like, this is how they do it, and this is how we should be, and that's the right way of going about it. But it may not be. There's different styles of therapy that works for some people and doesn't work for others. But if you keep engaging in it, you know, or if you can't afford to engage in it, trust me, find a friend, find a family member who you know, have a conversation. I would encourage you to reach out to me. I'll figure it out for you. I'll figure out some place where you can go that's low cost or free that will help you in these times of needs. Because, like I said, when I was doing it by myself, I couldn't go to my mom. She didn't probably know, and she probably had her own depression. You know, I don't know. And looking back, I can see she probably was. But, you know, you got to be a strong Black woman. You got to be a strong Black man. I mean, society didn't pull no punches for us. You know, and they're expecting us to always be okay with everything that goes on. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Just make sure that you're able to have communication with people if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling, even if you're not, just
Yep.
introvert or whatever, you can still have communication, whether through text or talking, and it'll actually help alleviate some of those feelings that you may get throughout this process. What's your take on that? I know I said a lot.
Go ahead,
Eric,
John.
you want to hit up? Okay. So, and what you said, there were so many amazing points. And I think there was a song that I remember growing up. And I'm not going to sing it, but I just remember this part. The true definition of a man is to never cry,
Yeah.
work till you die, gotta provide, be the rock for your family, protect them, by all means, give them everything that they need.
Yeah.
And growing up, I remember like that used to play in my head. Like that's what I'm supposed to do. And am I supposed to feel? No, I played sports. You know, I go in there, I've had I don't know how many concussions undiagnosed because you go in there, you get your bell rung, I'm dizzy. Okay, sit out of play, go back in. You know, as a man, as a black man, you know, we're taught to be strong. Don't show those signs of weakness. Because like you said, somebody's going to take advantage of that. And I think, you know, while I think that was with all good intentions, I don't think that now as a man that was solid advice, because we all hurt, we all need, and I'll go biblical. When we look at Jesus and when he was on the cross, what did he say right before he died? Father, why did you forsake me?
Yeah.
So even at that moment, he's crying out. So if you know your destiny, you're okay with your destiny, you're the son of God, and you're crying out, why is it not okay for me to cry out?
Yeah.
And when I got that premise and I got that real understanding, it started being a little bit better for me, but I'm still not great. It's a pride thing of a man, and it's also, I don't want somebody to see me as weak. I want somebody to see me as strong. Oh, he can deal with anything. He can do anything. You know, I suffered from ADHD growing up, and my dad was so against any type of medicine. I was on medicine. My grades were good. As soon as my dad found out, I was right off those medicines. You don't need that. And what he didn't realize is that you're right. Medicine isn't right for everybody, but sometimes medicine is right for certain people. You know, he wasn't doing it because he didn't love me. That just was his belief. But what he failed to do for me is allow me to be free, which again shuts down. Like, I don't need medicine. My dad says that, you know. So I think a lot of those things and a lot of things that we're dealing with now, you know, one, have stem from our past and stem from what that belief of a man is and how somebody's weak. Like, I have a group of friends in which I used to be afraid to have certain conversations because I didn't want them to see me that way. I didn't want them to see me as a failure. I wanted them to see me as successful. Same thing for many of us in our jobs. We bust our butts to do what we're supposed to do, and we can struggle, but we won't tell anybody we're struggling.
Exactly.
We won't tell anybody we're struggling in life. It's like, no. I'm going to hold it in. I'm going to keep it in. And then at the very last moment, you might ask that person, or why did that get done when your boss? Oh man, like I was struggling. But if you would have asked for that help prior, you'd have got it. But when it comes back to the mental health side of things, is if our brains are not healthy, we're not healthy.
Yeah.
If we're not having healthy thoughts on a consistent basis, that's a problem. And I think, like you said, that's where we need to reach out. And there are services. What a lot of people don't realize is most agencies, companies, inside of their benefits package is free counseling session.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them it's like free, but a lot of people don't know that. and don't know that they have this avenue that is absolutely free to you,
Mhm.
that you just got to take advantage of it. And that is somebody who is apart from your job, apart from anything, and that can get you the help. People don't you talked about suicide. And I think suicide is the greatest part of mental health, of a culmination of everything that's going on and in that moment. And that's where I think we don't want to get to that point of suicide. We would love to break it down early. And I think for the African American community, that's a roadblock that I think we often two times fall short on because we're too prideful. We don't want to feel less than. So it's awful. But as I alluded to earlier, my caseload used to be 90% white. And that's because they will admit to certain things and they don't care. Where we have this beef about us that we don't want to be shown as less than the next person. We're already facing a whole bunch of discrepancies that are going on.
Yep. It's just one more thing now.
So we don't want to feel less than. So I think that's an issue, and a valid issue, because we're fighting racism along with mental health. So if I'm a white person and we're even, and they look at it and say, okay, well, they both got some mental health. He's black. Okay, I'm gonna go with the white guy. So we don't want to show that we are less than. But Eric, I'll throw it to you. But it's tough. It's really tough as an African American dealing with any type of mental health and being able to come out and speak on it.
100%. I think that last piece that you said kind of resonates with me in the sense of you don't want to add more to the deck. And what I try to challenge people on when you got a problem, whatever that problem may be, not asking for help only exacerbates your issue. It's only going to make it worse. It's become a time bomb now, and now it's only a question of when. So for me, I definitely know a lot of people feel that way. You see it expressed in all kinds of ways. But that's the one thing I would say to anybody who watches this is don't let it become a ticking time bomb on you, right? Just address it. The hardest part is starting the journey, I think. There's a couple things that I want to come back to. So Byron, he talks about faith a little bit. And I'll say I do think faith is a coping mechanism for some. I think people treat it as a catch-all for everything. Just pray on it and it's going to be fixed.
Yeah.
I don't believe that fully. I think it's another tool.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
To look at it as
exactly.
Yeah.
To get you through that journey. And I think you both were talking about the fact that we're not allowed to be vulnerable within our culture, right? And that vulnerability is viewed as weakness, but I think it's quite the opposite. Being able to showcase that vulnerability and just keep it moving, to me shows strength, and the fact that you're not ruled by other people's opinions and thoughts. I mean, I struggled with that at my mother's funeral. I had people coming up to me telling me, you shouldn't be crying, et cetera, at my mother's funeral. And I mean, I had to tell some people in a very aggressive manner, please back up out of my space right now. I got a process. It is what it is. And I don't care about your opinion right now, or ever for that matter. But yeah, I definitely think we carry a lot of weight on just not truly being allowed to be yourself. And I think that's probably the most detrimental thing about mental health issues in the Black community. It's another mask that we have to wear.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
we already, as soon as you leave the house, you already got to put on here's my white person mask. Here's my speaking proper mask. Right. And then, I'm feeling down. Let me put on my happy mask, and it's just like, man, it's Byron, you said something that connected with me so hard. earlier about people noticing on your moods.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty high energy person most of the time when I'm feeling very positive. But there are times where whether it's I need to focus or you know what, I just had a bad day or a bad morning or whatever, and please don't get in my space. And people respond to that energy so hard.
Yeah.
And it's like you can't even have the privacy
Yeah.
to just process. Let me process,
Mm-hmm.
So, I definitely connect to all that stuff, but I just think the number one issue we need to focus on is understand your thoughts are just that, thoughts. They don't rule you, right? Just like your feelings don't rule you.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think of it like somebody put it to me like this. Feelings are like a wave. You just got to ride it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fun sometimes, right? But it'll pass, and then hopefully in the time when it's passing, maybe you can reach out to somebody. And I've heard there's all kinds. I mean, loneliness. I know people don't like to admit it, feeling lonely, but I think that's a big issue in this COVID situation right now.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
being lonely.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard about something a couple months back. I thought it was kind of crazy when I first heard about it, but I was like, look, if it's working for people, let me not disparage it. There's like apps now where you're not even talking to a person. It's like one of those little chat bots.
Mm.
And it will like periodically like check on you, like, hey, do you want to talk? Right? And it gives you an outlet if you don't have that. And some people don't have that.
Yeah.
So
That's crazy though. And I'm sorry to cut you off.
no worries.
Saying there's an app
Mm-hmm.
when there's how many people in this world?
Billions, 7 billion.
Billions of people in this world.
Billions. Mm-hmm.
A phone call, a text. Okay, we got a phone call, text message, social media,
Email.
Yeah. To reach out.
Regular mail. Pen pal.
Regular mail.
Mm-hmm.
And we still have to go to an app to get satisfaction of feeling like you belong or feeling like you were listened to, because the closest people to you, you're not open enough to let them in. And I'm not speaking from experience, not speaking from just pointing fingers, because I'm pointing back at myself. But I could say this. I would never tell anybody if I'm feeling down, because it just felt like I need them to see me on the positive all the time. And what's funny is this. Two of my best friends, I had a conversation with them before, and I eventually told them that I was being depressed. And they're like, oh, we knew. And I was like, well, how'd you know? We just knew. Yeah. But they didn't push the issue.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Right.
So it was crazy that in my mind, I was avoiding them. I wouldn't talk to them, and I would just pretend like everything was fine, because I knew when I was in that moment, I couldn't pretend. So I would pretend like everything's fine after, oh, I was just busy, blah, blah, blah. And then later on in life, you tell them about this, and they're like, yeah, we knew you're depressed. And they saw signs of it throughout, you know what I'm saying? They could have taken the next step and probably talked about it, but they were being cautious and very protective of my own image and maybe my own ego in that situation. So they didn't do it. Or they just didn't understand how to approach it, because everyone doesn't know how to approach it. And that's great, but for them to recognize it and me not even know that, and years later realize that they saw it, that lets you know that as much as you think you hide,
you're not.
From people, you're not hiding from people.
You're not.
Now there are people who are genuinely who care for you. And there's some people who just want to be in your space to see what's going on with you and see why you're not happy, for gossip and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think those two mesh too much, because especially when you're at work, your work friends may be your friends until you quit, or until you go to another job, or they go to another job. And then you'll keep in touch for like a week or two, but then they get into their new friends, and then they're whole new people. So you sometimes don't attach to people unless you've been there for years. Mm-hmm. But think of this. Everyone is born to someone, from someone, connected to someone else. And whether it's family still present, you still have created friends from those times. The issue is, as we get older, we shun more friends because we say friends aren't real or because we got hurt by them.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have that conversation with them about the hurt. A lot of times we just discard them.
Yeah.
And then we go for
Right.
another friend. And they do the
Mhm.
same thing. And guess what? Sometimes the common denominator is yourself. Because those friends are not doing anything different. All they're doing is reciprocating what you're giving. Because keep in mind this, for years with those same friends, same two friends, I didn't talk to them about my issues. I didn't talk to them about a lot of personal things. I had a full conversation with them all the time, but I never really revealed anything about me.
Mhm.
You know, very basic stuff. You know what I'm saying? You know, but they'll tell me all the things, you know, and I'm like, okay, good. You know, I'll help them out and all that kind of stuff. I'm helping them with their mental health, and I'm not giving them any information about me.
Right.
And I
still do
realized that
today.
I was protecting myself the whole time. I had the shield up, but I'm like peeking over and saying, hey, give me some information. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna fix that for you. Hold on. You know, and I'm hiding back when I'm depressed. And I realized that all I was doing was creating a wedge between myself and other people and creating more opportunity for my mental health to be deteriorating and under those shields that I was putting myself into. And then I start looking out for things to fix that or to pacify that feeling. And then when you look for things to pacify a feeling that you can't control or a feeling that you don't understand, you look the wrong ways. You look for different things. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And I remember working at a bank, and a customer of mine brought me a big, I don't know if it was a gallon or whatever it was, a big thing of some Captain Morgan. That was just her gift for helping her or whatever. She brought me a Captain Morgan. She said, hey, I heard you like Captain Morgan. This is one of my drinking days. So at the bank, back in the day, it was more like the bank was you were the owner, or not owner, but you were the manager and stuff like that. So it was stuff like that. So I would just pour me a drink at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of Coke, drink. I carried that bottle everywhere I went in my car. I kept it in my trunk so it would never issue with police or anything like that if I got pulled. But I remember going to my friend's house, one of my other friends, and I brought the bottle in. And this was like, I went there every day after work. So this is 5 days, Monday through Friday. I brought that bottle in and poured me a drink for 5 days. You see that trend, right? Where it's almost going. And he looked at me and said, Byron, you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. As I'm pouring a drink, you know, because in my mind, I was using something to cope with some things that was going on, but I wasn't paying attention to it. It wasn't the lady's fault who brought the drink to me. It was my fault because I took that drink as a coping skill. Although I had someone with me who was willing to listen to me, I didn't give him that information. You know what I'm saying? And he was very pro, you know, talk and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, no, I'm a man. I'm gonna hold myself. You ain't gonna talk to me like, you know, that's a woman thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So he asked me, he said, you've been drinking every day. You know, I ain't say nothing at first, but hey, you've been drinking every day. And I'm like, I have? Didn't even know it. And at that point, I started paying attention. I said, okay. And I left it at his house, and did. Thank God I didn't become an alcoholic from that, because I could have, because had he not said anything, I would have continued. Because keep in mind, Monday through Friday, yes, I drank with him. But on a Saturday, maybe a sudden, I would go out with some other friends and drink who went out. You get what I'm saying? And now I'm really drinking. And so now the only day I wasn't drinking was Sunday. You see what I'm saying? Because I probably was hungover or whatever.
Yeah.
So that would have been a vicious cycle. And I think God had a lot to play in that, because looking back, the conversations that I had and how people just always seem to catch me at that right before I fell off phase and stuff like that. So, but imagine people who don't have that. Imagine people who don't have that friend or that family member or that just that internal monitoring system that says, hey, I'm doing too much, you know? And I know marijuana is a subject that people's touchy about, but anything that you feel you have to defend because you do it so much is an addiction. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and play like it's the worst thing in the world, but if you can't go a day without doing it and you feel you have to defend that, then you're pretty much addicted to it, and it has you. You don't have it.
Right.
You know, if you're willing to risk your job or any other thing because of it, then it's an addiction. You know, growing up, I didn't really have tie to drugs and stuff like that. I mean, it just was never. I get high off life, that was my thing. So drugs was never my thing. But when I dabbled in it, I was like, this is crazy. This is crap. It wasn't really anything. But just imagine if I would have gravitated towards it and stuck to it, in addition to my depression, I would have been deep in that, in that world. And there are so many people that are experiencing the same thing I was experiencing, which I thought was myself. And they turn to these things that make them feel good for the moment. And you want to extend those moments as long as you possibly can, so you continue to do it. And I just think it's crazy that when you mentioned that app, that we are resulting to our worst fears and nightmares of disconnection from people. We have social media, but we're not socially connected. We have some of the best ways to communicate with people, but we don't even connect with them.
We're making the connections weaker.
Exactly. When we can sit and have 1 billion followers and friends, and then we don't even know anything about them, and they don't know anything about you, and that's crazy. We know more about celebrities than we know about our family members and our closest friends.
Right.
And and I think that contributes. I think that's a society thing. I think that society saying that mental health is not as important as fame and glory, or fame and fortune. And that itself is a mental health issue, because fame is only going to get you so far. Fortune is only going to get you, till the end of your death. I mean, then it goes away because you no longer have it. So yes, you can help it for your family or have it for your family later on. But the reality is this: if you made $1 million+ in your lifetime, if it didn't bring you an ounce of happiness, what did you really bring forth in life? And
what's it all for?
And it's like, okay, I died and left my children this nice nugget, but they don't know anything about you.
Yeah, or they hate you.
Or they hate you.
In some cases, they hate you.
Yep.
Yeah. He was never at my games. He was never, or she was never there for me. And I used to hear this all the time in the bank. I tell you this, I was so surprised, because I'm close to my family, that these people would come in after their parents have died, and all they wanted was the money. There was no emotion to it. I can't believe she only left me this amount. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, how? Mm-hmm. And I'm just trying to figure out where that disconnect comes from. But, I don't know their family history, so I don't know. But it's still, as a human, you still think that at some point, another human has to care enough for another human. And in a chain effect, that if everyone is caring for one person, then we'll all care for each other if we did that. But that it's never like that. It's always, I care for my group, my circle, and that's it. And if you're not in my circle, the heck with you. But then when an issue comes up like suicide or someone's depressed, where are you at? Because when that person's reaching out to you, where are you at? Are you considering them not in your circle because they're doing something that's out of your spectrum? You can't understand why they're doing this, because it's like, oh, they're not doing the same thing they used to. They're not hanging around us anymore. Why are they not hanging around you anymore? You don't ask that question. Hey, what's going on? You just be like, oh, you acting funny. You different now. No, I'm just going through something. Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll holler at you. You holler at me when you're ready. And then you just drift apart. You get what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah, but you even hear that language right there. Even that language, because we've all been in situations like that. That's already defensive. That's already pushing somebody away.
Yep.
Right? It's not coming from a place of compassion. And I think that's really a part of that's so hard. I think because we are in a community that suffered so much. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I feel like we've forgotten how to be compassionate to ourselves and to other people. Yeah.
Yes. Whew.
Deep stuff, man.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
Ironically, the whole purpose of this whole podcast was to talk about things that affect grown men too. And I say grown men because, if you're mature enough to talk about these things, you grow. Um, and of course, COVID, police brutality still brewing over us. Looking for waiting for them to arrest the killers of Breonna Taylor.
Mhm.
Anyways, um,
Still waiting.
and we see how mental health can be pushed to the side so easy, and social injustice, although it should be pushed forward in those social injustices. I mean, those are all issues. I always said this: if someone has to kill somebody, there's a mental instability somewhere at some
Mhm.
point. Not necessarily long term. It could be short term. It could be something going on, but it also can stem from a long term, because the idea to want to kill somebody, other than the reaction of self-preservance or protection, there has to be some mental, uh, and I don't want to say the wrong word. There has to be a mental challenge that 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 is embedded in that person. But we don't see it that way. We see it as behavior, or a crime. So especially when it comes to the Black community, if a child is acting out in school, he's bad.
Mhm.
You get what I'm saying? We label him bad. We don't label him with a mental health disorder other than ADHD or whatever they want to call it.
Yeah.
But then he gets the resource officer or whoever else, he gets
Yep.
arrested, goes to, uh, if he's young enough, he's going to either go to juvenile or he's going to
Mhm.
get Baker acted. You get what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And those two environments only breed the prison viewpoint, because it
Right.
says people look like me are here and they understand how I feel, and we're having fun right now because I'm now with people who are like me. It doesn't teach them anything. And they have the little group therapies, and I think it works for some, but let's be
Mhm.
realistic. When 17 people are together and they have the same issue or something going on, and the person who's over that group may have minimal exposure to this group of kind of people in their own culture, they
Yep.
can't they cannot
Yep.
help them. They cannot help them. I am talking to every psychologist, every sociologist, every person who goes into the community looking to help people. First, do your research of this culture, because Black people deal with things different than white people. That's just it.
Yep.
Hispanic people deal with things different than Black people. It's
Yep.
just culture. You cannot bring your conforming ideas
Mhm.
into therapy and think it's going to work for them. They deal with a whole different set of parameters when it comes to stress. And if you don't understand that, please do not bring your stuff to these people, because all you're doing is causing more damage. And yes, I'm being direct because I seen it, because I worked in it, and I seen all from the beginning to the end of it. So I seen from the kids being there. I worked in mental health, as in mental health for behaviors, places for kids. I worked in a jail. So that's the end result. And I see some of these same people I grew up with who was considered bad in
Mhm.
school in jail,
Mhm.
and they're like, "Hey, Deputy Nelson." And I'm like, "Hey, what's up, man? I didn't expect you to be here." You know? And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I kind of did, because I remember you in school.
Right.
And I'm putting that blame on me, because I put that judgment on that person, because based on society is telling me that a bad person will end up this
Mhm.
way.
Mhm.
But when I started studying psychology and how the behavior of people are in certain areas and certain places or certain mindsets, I realized that the stigma is formed by us. Mental health stigmas are formed by us, which causes more mental health issues.
Yep.
So
Yep.
if I'm going to treat someone, I have to treat someone with the knowledge of their base, the knowledge of their foundation, not the knowledge of what I want their foundation to be. That's the way I see it. I may be wrong, but I'm right.
I love that one. The last thing I got to say on the topic is I think as a whole, and I don't think there's a person with brown skin in this country who does not suffer from it. I think we all and I don't know if there's a clinical term for this, but I think we all suffer from paranoia, because you can't go through an interaction as a brown person in this country without being concerned that maybe your race played into it. Because
Yeah.
they learned this is not 1955 anymore. You can't
Mhm.
just call me certain things. Well,
Mhm.
sorry, Mr. Trump came back and who they feel differently now apparently. But I digress. Um, but so you don't know. And I've had some younger black folks coming up in their careers, and they'll ask me, they'll say, "Oh, I see you doing good things. I see things working out for you. How do you deal with this stuff?" And I tell them point blank, and I don't know, this might be more of the just covering up, but I tell people personally, I don't address it unless it's explicit. If you come at me and it's explicit, or you say something sideways to me, okay, let's go, right? Let's talk about it
Yeah.
now. Let's address that. But people aren't stupid like that anymore. Or sometimes they don't even understand that their bias is happening. You know, I have a gentleman who I used to work with for years, who held me back in my promotion, my growth promotion opportunities. And as through that journey, he's coaching me, and I think the world of this man. So I do not want to say that he's a racist in any regard. I think the world of him. But he couldn't see, like, he's giving me advice, and I'm kind of like, but I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. Like, I'm doing stuff you don't even understand, right? I'm taking on responsibility without any authority, right? And so we worked through all that stuff. Let's fast forward now. This is about 5 years ago, right? He just recently, is now out of work, and he calls me up asking for fundamental advice, which is mind blowing to me. Oh, it's been 20 years since I've had to write a resume. Can you help me write a resume? You're so good at crafting a narrative and really talking about, like, and making a package to sell to people. Can you help me do some of that with some of my experiences? This is the same man who was telling me I wasn't ready for X, Y, and Z, and stuff like that kind of blows me away, because I'm just like, you can't see that disconnect. You couldn't see all of my talent then, but the second you looking for a hand, now you can see all the talent.
We saw it.
You know, you don't understand that bias. You don't understand what that does to people, and how, and the black tax, right? Work twice as hard, be twice as good, get half as much. They I don't know. I don't think they see it, and I don't think, I wish that was one thing that anybody who's watching this who hasn't lived the brown and black experience, understand that people are constantly concerned about it, because it's every day for us.
And I guess I'll I'll finish up, I guess, kind of somewhat on the basis of what you were talking about, Eric. I mean, people don't realize how their words can be taken, what it can do, how it can hurt. Um, in my specific situation, I had a teacher that, I remember told me that I was never going to be anything. Actually, I had multiple teachers, but
Oh, wow.
Ah, okay.
this one was one that said it in the midst of people, and that shined the brightest in my head when I remember. And was I a knucklehead? Yeah. Did I have some stuff? But if I wasn't who I was, and if I wasn't built the way that I was, I could have went a total different route. That could have put me into a tailspin. And here you are, somebody of higher education who's supposed to be promoting. If you see there's an issue, why are you not assisting? If you see that there's a need, why are you not trying to meet it or find a way to get it met? Um, but the funny story is, when I graduated college, I went back to my school and I asked the principal, is there any way I can make a copy of my diploma? And I want to put it in every teacher's mailbox. And he didn't know why. He didn't know why I wanted to do it, why I had certain teachers, but he allowed me to do that. And that gave me the satisfaction of saying, y'all said I couldn't do this. I got
I
all
know.
these people here. Valley Victorian didn't graduate from college, But here I am, 4-year school, did it with a very high GPA when you
Yeah.
said I couldn't do it. But
Yep.
so fast forward to a few years, ended up getting to talk to the teacher that said this to me, that the one that truly affected me. And I said that very thing. If I was anybody else, because I'm the type of person, if you tell me I can't do something, I'm gonna do it. I don't do well with I can't, I don't, you're not gonna make it, whatever. I like to overcome stuff. But you put a hurdle in front of me, and that could have went a terrible way. What happens if I really had high hopes that I was going to do something and you said that, and like you said, I go out into this depression, I go out and commit suicide because here I am believing that teachers are supposed to be here to educate, to uplift, and to assist. And you did the total opposite. He told me I was an exception to the rule, right? So
Wait, this
I
is years
faced,
later?
this is
He
years
told.
later.
Wow.
I was an exception to the rule. Um, Most people don't put in that work that they're supposed to make it to where they need to. But he's happy he did it, and he's happy that I am where I am. So in my
Because he
old,
motivated you somehow?
that's how he put it. Now, I used to have anger problems. By this time, my anger problems was good, and I allowed that conversation to be done because I didn't need to go further. I did what I needed to do to get my vindication to show you you can put down who you want to put down, and
Yeah.
that's not who I'm going to be. But what
Yeah.
stinks and what the awful part is, there are probably a lot of young men and women whose lives might have been shaped by what
Yep.
he did. And again,
Yep.
there's a difference between the teachers that said it, but I didn't hear it, and to say it in front of somebody amongst other people. That's where the biggest problem is.
You
I've done
still
it
feel
before,
it.
yes. And it's that embarrassment that there's other people in the midst when you're saying it. Like, dang, he said that he wasn't
hmm
gonna be nothing. Y'all hear that? He said Darrell was
hmm
going. So, but that's the last thing I'll say on is that people don't realize that mental health. And again, if I was a child that was already suffering at that time, or I was in a state of depression, or I was having anxiety over, you know, finishing up school or what I should do next, that could push you over. And
hmm
not enough of us help each other. Byron, you said it as a friend, you know, they saw it. And like you said, the one thing that they could have done, the only other thing is, hey man, I see this. Let me help you out. And I think that's what we have to do as African Americans all around is not to just watch or not to condemn because we think that you are less than, not strong enough,
Yeah.
not holding up your black values. But at the end of the day, I see a problem and I'm gonna try to help find a solution. And that's what I think we have to do as African Americans.
Yeah.
We do. We
Yeah.
do.
I agree. I totally agree. And what I'm going to do is we were going to go straight into our next topic, which kind of negates some of the topics that we have here. Um, so I'm gonna end this topic because this is a very good topic. And although we only scratched the surface, there's so much information that goes deeper. Um, we may do part 2, 3, something like this on this, and include the other guys in it because I definitely want to get Dante's viewpoint, Fabe's viewpoint, because when I asked them about doing it, they didn't think they had any input on it. And that right there lets me know that we as a community are so far behind the eight ball on what's going on with mental health. I mean, when someone says, I don't really know, I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying that's just what you're raised to know. You
hmm
don't know much about it. No one taught me about it. Had I not went to school for, psychology, I wouldn't even understand half of it. And there's a whole, like I said, there's a whole middle page that I took out of this whole conversation that brings more in depth of my understanding of mental health. But what I want to do is to make sure that people understand, people who will watch this or who hear about this, is that mental health is not something to be embarrassed about. Or your mental health, or mental illness is not something to be embarrassed about. It's something that you, just like anything, you treat it, and you learn ways to cope with certain things. If you get a cold, you take, a cough medicine or whatever. So it's the same thing with mental health. You have to practice finding ways of making it a healthier way of living. So if it includes selecting who you hang around because some people are toxic, or it excludes taking away social media for, days of the week, do those things, find something else, exercise, those kind of things. And I too have to figure out, to put myself in those positions to do that. So, I just want to make sure people understand that they can be encouraged by others if they just take that first step sometimes to let people know that they're feeling a certain way. And then you'll find out who's really there for you and who's not there for you. And, if you really want to know who your real friends are, tell them about, your mental health and see it. I mean, because, money doesn't tell you what your real friends are. It's a struggle. It's always a struggle that causes the real friends to show up. So that's what I'm going to leave for the last part of that. And I want to say thank you guys for that conversation.